Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining into this session of the Cosmo Campfire. I'm really excited to present with you today the Gantt chart and our newest feature, Constraint Scheduling. I'm your host today. My name is Lexi Brunt. I am a Senior Customer Success Representative with Africa, and I've been with the company about 5 years now. On the agenda today, we are going to review the Gantt chart and all of its features, and then again, our latest enhancement, the constraint scheduling. Now, the Gantt chart is used to create projects, manage project timelines, establish relationships between the tasks on your projects, and more. So today we'll make sure that we have an understanding of the Gantt chart, how to create projects from it, and managing the predecessors, dependencies, rescheduling. We'll also take a look at critical paths and baselines, and then we'll cover off our newest feature, constraint scheduling. Now, before we get into the demo, due to this subject being quite detailed and having a lot of features, we will wait to answer any questions until the end of the demonstration. We'll open up for an office hour session. Feel free to put your questions in the chat or in the questions section of the chat, and I will be sure to pick those questions up at the end of the demonstration. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the Gantt chart. Now, there are a few places that you can find the Gantt chart. You can navigate directly to the Gantt chart from the management pad of the Mission Control console. And that can be found here. So you would just select which project that you would like to view and so forth. Another place that you can find the Gantt chart is directly from a project page layout in the project overview. And that is where I will be making most of my changes today. So you can see I've navigated to a project from here. You can also choose to embed the Gantt chart into different page layouts like your project, your opportunity, and other places in Mission Control. And then lastly, we have our standalone Gantt chart. So this can be found by navigating to the Gantt chart button in the navigation tab at the top. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Or you can press the standalone button on the Gantt chart in a project overview, and that will pop out into the standalone Gantt chart as well. All right, now before we get into using the Gantt chart, I do want to confirm that I am on the 1.75 release. So you'll see a slight difference in the UI. Something to look forward to with our new update coming, producing to your production org at the end of the month. So we'll be pushing. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the settings of the Gantt chart before I get started. Now, you can choose to override your Gantt chart settings from the Mission Control console control pad. So I went to the Mission Control tab, and I'm in the control pad. I just scroll down to the Gantt chart section. This will allow you to add your own logo to your Gantt chart, or your Mission Control logo is going to be the default. This will be carried over when you choose to include your Gantt chart in exports and in your client read-only page and other places that the Gantt chart is displayed. You can choose to disable the tooltips and the hover feature within the Gantt chart, which we'll review in just a second. And then this is also where you will enable the new constraint scheduling feature. You can choose to add custom fields to the Gantt chart. I've chosen to display my hour scheduled billable on all layers of the project. So if I have a portfolio, a program, project phase, and so forth, will display my hours scheduled. I have enabled this. Now you can see I put it in the custom to column. So when I choose to enable this on my Gantt chart, I have to make sure I'm using the custom to column. And I'll show you that in just a second here. A great thing is you can also choose to adjust the fields based on record type or category. So this is controlled on the project level if you are using record types. And you can configure this by selecting a controlling field. You can use any other pick list value on the project object. I have category. I do not have record type set up, so I will use category. And this states that when my category is set to professional services, then I can customize which fields are displayed for which level of the project. Okay. Moving forward, if you want all of your settings to be managed and display the same for all of the users in your org, you can choose to override the Gantt chart settings. This way, everyone gets the same view of the Gantt chart. Otherwise, they will be able to manage it on their own in terms of what is hidden and enabled and disabled. All right, I've chosen to keep all of my fields enabled. I'm not overriding due to my enabled phase creation and autosave and everything being done on my standalone Gantt chart settings. Okay. All right, and then getting into the data table columns, I have all of my columns enabled and displayed. And then again, I'm using my custom to column for my custom field values. Lastly, in the Gantt chart settings, you can choose to determine where your project's line starts when you navigate to your Gantt chart. I've chosen to automatically go to the start of the project instead of today. Okay, we'll get a little bit deeper into these features as we move forward within the Gantt chart. So let's take a look on our project level. This project has been cloned from a project template. You can see I do not have assignments yet. All my project layer is assigned to placeholders. So let's get into how to create and manage your project from here. Assuming I need to continue to add items here, I can choose to inline edit and add them. Now, if you have custom fields on your objects within mission control, you may want to consider adding those fields to the layout of the Gantt chart. So for example, if I click into a action, it will open up my record detail, and you may want to add your custom fields here. So before I show you that, or before I show you creating the project, let me just show you that field set. To get here, I navigated to the object manager. This is on different layers of your project. So the project phase, milestone, action, checklist item will each have their own field sets. You can add in whatever custom fields that you would like. There is also a field set for your hover tools. So when you hover over an action, you will see details about that action. You can control which fields are displayed there in your hover tips Gantt chart field set. So Gantt chart tooltip fields. All right. Another thing to consider is when I just double clicked on my action, it automatically opened up the record detail. I can choose to have it open up on a different tab automatically. Now, the action tab has key fields that we've chosen within the package to display, and that would not change. So to manage that, that would be on your role level. So I've navigated to a role object, the role object in mission control. And I have a list of different list views that are included in the package to manage my Gantt chart default tabs. Okay, so as you can see for myself, I've chosen to view the the action record detail as my default. You can also hide the additional tabs if they are not required for your team. Same is available for your milestone, your project level, and your checklist item. All right. All right, so let's clean up our tabs here. All right, now getting into creating a project from your Gantt chart. You have the ability to add in items from multiple different ways. You can navigate to the layer that you would like to create an item under and hit the plus icon. You can also choose to inline and add a task from the new task bar at the bottom of the Gantt chart. For example, I may want to follow up with my client after I've added the users for their registration. So I'm just going to create a task. Now you can see that it automatically made the task blue, which is my milestone level. You can choose to drag and drop. So if I drag and drop this under a milestone, you can see it highlights the entire milestone. That will cause it to be in action. Now I can continue to move this in different layers of my project until I hit save. Once I hit save, the record is created and it cannot be changed. So for example, I actually want this to be a checklist item under the register action. And you can see it's added my record here. I'm going to go ahead and add my placeholder, assignment, and so forth. One thing you will want to do is hit save in my Gantt chart. And there is an autosave feature that is available for the Gantt chart. So if you want to make sure that your changes are saved without losing your place, you may want to have that enabled. All right. Now let's review the options that are available in our toolbar. Okay. We have the ability to hide or display the data table, or hide and display the chart that is available to the right. We have our Gantt chart settings. If I override this in my console, you will not be able to see the settings here. And again, we have all of the similar settings here. You can zoom in and zoom out of your project. So now I'm zoomed out to my weekly view. You have a day's view, week, month, and year. And zooming into my project. You can also choose to toggle on and off your baseline dates. Now, as I continue to make changes in my project, my baseline dates will be affected, okay? So what I mean by that is when I create my project, my baseline dates are created and saved. As I continue to make changes to my project plan before progressing my project, so we're still in this template mode of just getting the project in a way that it looks as required, you'll see that my baseline dates are affected. So I've extended the date on this action. I've rescheduled some of my tasks from when they are originally scheduled. As you can see, I've rescheduled my data migration and so forth. So to reset this, I will need to hit edit on my project. And at wherever you have in your page layout, I have this field at the bottom of my project page. I have set baseline dates. And that will go through on all of the layers of the project and reset my baseline dates. So let me just refresh here. All right, you can also choose to expand and collapse different areas of your project. So if you want to only view your milestones and your phases, or you want to drill down into your actions and your checklist items, you can continue to hit the expand icon to dive further into the project. Next, you have your auto schedule feature. This will toggle on and off auto schedule, which controls our dependencies, and we'll get into that in a little bit after we review our project. You have your jump to today button. So this will jump to the today line of our calendar here. And then again, you have your standalone Gantt chart. You can choose to import and export your project plan to a file. And if you want to import a project into the Gantt chart, you will need to go to your standalone Gantt chart. Okay. Next, you have your PDF export, CSV, and your PNG export. Now, this button is required if you're using features like the project status report and you want to include an image. You have to make sure you hit this to take a snapshot of your Gantt chart. Now, whatever features you have enabled or disabled, so like you can choose to hide items from the Gantt chart. We'll get into that in just a little bit. You'll want to make sure that is done before exporting your image of the Gantt chart. All right, now getting back into our project plan. As you can see, we have our project level here at the top. I've chosen to be able to display my phases of my project. I can also create phases from my project level. So if I am to hit the plus icon at the project level, I need to determine what kind of record I'm going to create, whether that's a phase or a milestone. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and create a milestone record to also show you a few other features that we have at this level. Okay, when creating a milestone, you can determine the sort order that it is displayed in the Gantt chart. So right now it is sorted by the tasks and items are sorted by date, but I might want a certain phase of the project to display in a different area. And I would manage that by the milestone sort order field. Once I arrange my items in the way that I want them displayed, a value will be saved here. I can also choose to have deadlines. So this will determine, this will set a deadline that I can name on my Gantt chart. I'm going to create this on a actual existing milestone just to show you what that looks like. And that lets me know if I'm getting near to the deadline or not. Now, as I mentioned before, you can choose to hide items from the Gantt chart. That can be, your milestone level, your action, or your checklist item level. And to do that, you would just mark the exclude from Gantt field true. Okay. Thank you guys for submitting questions. I will address those at the demo session. I'm sorry, at the questions portion of this demo. All right, now notice I am in the milestone tab and not the record detail. After I create and confirm, I can go into my milestone and add additional details from the record detail tab, which I have not hit save yet. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hit save. And let's go ahead and add a deadline for my milestone. So this is on the project initiation. This milestone will be going until the 2nd of June. And so I want to make sure that it does not go further than the 10th of June. And I'm going to set a deadline there. So I'm going to name my deadline and then give it a date. And that is set for the 10th of June. I'm going to go ahead and confirm. You can see I have my little deadline symbol here. I'm going to go ahead and save. All right. Now, again, there are two ways that you can create your actions and checklist items. from the plus symbol. So if I hit it on the milestone level, that'll create an action. If I hit it on the action level, that will create a checklist item. Okay. Once I get all of my items within the display, I can choose to reschedule the tasks. Now, right now, I have the auto schedule feature turned on, and because I have dependencies, if I am to reschedule a task, it will also reschedule the child tasks. If I turn this off and I reschedule a task, the dependency will be changed to honor the new change in date. I'm gonna go ahead and hit save so I don't lose my order here. Now you can choose to reschedule the entire project by dragging and dropping, or a phase of the project, or a milestone, action, and checklist item, and so forth. All right. Now, as you begin to progress your project, you will see warning dates. Because this project has not started yet, you will not see any dates here. But if I had a task that was scheduled before today, so let me just reschedule my first task before today, then you'll see a warning icon. Now, I'm also going to go ahead and expand the record name tab as well. So let me hit save here. And as you can see, I now have some red and amber color flags here to just alert my users to know, hey, the 7th has passed. This task is not in completed status. If I've begun the task because my end date goes into June, then I've at least progressed the task. Okay. We also have the amber symbol because the 22nd and the 23rd are coming soon, and these tasks will be up next to begin. All right, now another thing that you'll want to note is that this is also in line with the status of the task as well. Okay. All right. Now, before we get into dependencies, I do want to let you know that most of these fields are editable within the data table. I can go ahead and start assigning my project. I can mark something as planned or in progress. I can even log time to a task or within my Gantt chart as well, or I can go ahead and navigate within the task, and there is the log time component as well. If you are using your own progression values on your project, you can choose to override how the completion percentage is determined by using the progress bar. So I can drag and drop progress on my task from here. Now, once I override the completion percentage by doing that, I will have to continue to manage it manually as such. And now I can choose, we've seen that we can reschedule an action, but if you notice, when I hover over this assigned project resources, at the end of the task, before hitting my dependency, I have an arrow that allows me to extend or regress the amount of working days that are assigned on this task. All right. I'm going to save before continuing. And then we can go ahead and get into managing our dependencies. Now we have a few different dependency types. When this is enabled, you can choose to use the predecessors column with the WBS work breakdown structure to determine your different dependency relationships. Okay, we have 3 different relationships. We have finish to start, so that's when you drag from a parent to the beginning of a task. And that means that this child task cannot start until this parent task is finished. You have a start to start relationship between the two tasks. And then you have a finish to start. So if I was to double click and remove this dependency line, then I can create a finish to finish relationship so that they must finish at the same time. Okay. Again, I'm going to double click to remove this, and we established a start to start relationship. You can also choose to manually enter the values in the predecessor column. So I could say I want that the task to start one day after the parent task. And you can see that has modified my dependency. Now, if I start to reschedule, there will always be a day between the start of these two actions. All right. Let's go ahead and hit save. All right. You have the ability to specify both a parent and a child from the phase, record, milestone, action, checklist item, and you can also choose to have cross-project dependencies. Now, this will only occur if you are using the standalone Gantt chart and you have multiple projects displayed. Then you can begin to create inter-project dependencies. You might want to collapse your sections to be able to view this. Again, my purple line is my, sorry, let me over here zoom out. My purple line is my project. If I had programs on this display, then I will be able to view programs. So let's actually go ahead and filter by program. And this will automatically load the projects that are included. Then I can choose to create dependencies between these tasks or between these projects within the program. All right, getting back into my project specific Gantt chart. I've created a few different dependencies. Before getting into constraint scheduling, I do want to show you how you can cause a project to have a my mind is blanking. This is called a critical path. Oh my goodness, I just blanked. So sorry. This is called a critical path. So when there is no slack allowed in a project, and what I mean by that is if I'm going to reschedule any of the tasks within this area of the project, it can cause my entire project to not be delivered on time. So when the bar turns red, there is no slack allowed. Otherwise, all of the tasks in this area will push out the end date of my project. You can still have lag and lead between the tasks, but more so focus on the ending of the project will be affected here. Okay. All right. Just making sure I have reviewed all of the tasks here. Now, another thing about dependencies, there is enforcement logic available. This is all controlled on the project level. There's a field called enforce dependency validation. Now, if this is set to true, which I believe is in this area here, if this is set to true, if a child in a start to start relationship is rescheduled, you will not be able to change the status to in progress on that child task if the dates do not align. Okay, similar to if you have a finish to start relationship, if the parent action does not have a completed status or milestone or checklist item, if it does not have a completed status, I will not be able to begin my next task. Okay. If this is all set to true and your user triggers or like tries to mark something as in progress, an on-screen error will occur. We also have dependency notifications. So if you would like to notify the record owner, so like if I have an action owner established here and I have completed my parent task, then the record owner for the next action, I'm sorry, let me specify the action owner will receive an email notification. Right. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our constraint scheduling. I do want to note that your non-working days will be based off of your business hours. If you have resources that have non-working days like holidays or role availability that has long-term or short-term time off, those days will be grayed out. So if I try to assign a task to a resource and they are not available, the task will be rescheduled to the next available date. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get into constraint scheduling. To do so, I will use my training area of my project. I went ahead and established all my dependencies that are required in certain areas of the project. Now, with that being said, if I was to clone this project, my dependencies will be carried over. So that's another thing to mention. Now, to use the constraint scheduling, you will have to turn it on in two places. So for one, I will need to turn on the constraints column. Let me update that. And then in my control pad, I will need to enable constraint scheduling. So let's go ahead and save that. Now going back to my project, I'm going to go ahead and refresh the screen. And wait for my Gantt chart to reopen. Alright. So you can see I now have the constraint scheduling column here. I will have the ability to establish a constraint type and then the date. Now we have a few different types here. Let me just navigate to my training portion of my project. So just clicking on the area that I would like to jump to. The options that I have available are as soon as possible. So that means that the start date will be scheduled as soon as possible, factoring in any dependencies. So if I'm to create a dependency, I'm actually going to create one for the prepare training materials and deliver training materials, because of course that will need to be completed first. And I'm actually going to reorder my follow-up and make sure that follow-up is actually after my delivered training. All right, so let me just save those dependencies first. And again, because we're at the end of the project, if I'm to reschedule any of these tasks, it will push out the end date. So you'll see that my critical path is continued. Okay. Now, again, if it is marked as soon as possible, anytime that I reschedule my parent task, the child task will happen immediately after. Okay. Now, another thing to note is when you turn on constraint scheduling, the ability to turn off auto scheduling will be removed from the display. And that is because we are now setting up rules for our dependencies to follow. Okay, so let's get into the different types. We have as soon as possible that we've reviewed, and now we will review start no earlier than. So although I have this relationship between my two tasks, I do not want training to start earlier than the 14th of June. Okay, so I will determine my constraint type and then establish the date. I don't want training to start before the 14th of June. That is a Saturday. That's July, I'm sorry. So we jump down to July and then click out of the box. All right, so now that I've clicked out of my constraint here, you can see there is a new symbol that is showing here. Now, the dotted line means that I have flexibility to schedule this task anywhere after this constraint. And you see the arrow is the direction in which I can schedule this task. So I can continue to schedule the task this direction, but I cannot reschedule before the 14th of July. So, I can move this around, but I cannot reschedule before the 14th of July. Now, if you move this around before hitting save, you do have the ability to move the constraint. Once it is saved, it will lock. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save and then just show you the behavior as I move my tasks around. All right. I'm also going to delete this dependency so it doesn't conflict. I don't want any lag or lead. I just don't want it to conflict with what I'm doing here. All right, so you can see that I can make this task as early or as late as possible, but it will not move my deliver training before the 14th. Okay, due to that constraint. All right, so let's go into the next constraint type, and that is start no later than. So that means I can move the task around as much as I want, but it cannot occur or start at any later than the 14th of July. And so you see my arrow has changed directions. I do still have the dotted line. I can still move my task around anywhere according to my dependencies. So my dependencies will still be prioritized, but I just have a deadline here. It cannot start later than the 14th of July. Okay. I can even have the following tasks occur after by adding a lag or lead. But this task in particular cannot be scheduled after. All right, let me go ahead and hit save. And then let's get into the next type. All right, so I can choose to finish no earlier than. So we were first working on the start date. Now we are working on the finish of the task. So I cannot finish earlier than the 14th of July. So let me hit save. All right, and you can see that the task has now rescheduled to honor that constraint that you cannot finish earlier. Now I can choose to reschedule the task after. Let's save again. And just lock my constraint really quick. All right. Now I can choose to reschedule this task. Stay. And then click out. Now I can reschedule my task after my constraint date, but it has to finish no earlier than the 15th. All right, getting into our next type, finish no later than the 14th. You see my dependency here is honored first. Let's jump to our section here. I can again reschedule this as much as I want based on my parent dependency here. I can create a logger lead, but it must occur before or finish before the 14th of July. All right, and then we have the must start on or must finish on. So I may want this task to occur, like for example, my customer can say, hey, we're ready for training, but we have someone who is out sick and we cannot start until the 14th of July, but it must happen by then due to the go live of the project. Okay, so now you'll see that my task line for my constraint is now solid. So I don't have the flexibility to move this around and reschedule it as I may want, because it must occur on that date. And then similar to that one, it must finish on. I can have my task, move around as much as possible. I can extend my task forward and it can occur for a certain amount of days, but it must be completed on the constraint date that is established now. Because I haven't hit save, that constraint is not locked yet. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and hit save now. Does anyone have any questions? Let's go ahead and get into our Q&A section here. We have a question from Brian. Is there a way to show the baseline dates in the project plan and not just the Gantt chart? Yes. So the baseline dates are fields on your project level. So let me just click in here and I'll show you. On my record detail, it's usually right below the start and end date of the existing record. So you can establish your baseline dates here. It is also on your milestone level. That is a little different from your deadline field. Okay. And your action level is usually on your page layout around the start and end date. You can create rules so that the baseline dates aren't changed as you begin to progress your project so that you get an accurate view of your project plan. Now I'm gonna mark my set baseline dates again. Now I've made additional changes to my project. And hit save. So that's going to go through all of my records and go ahead and reschedule. Now, it does take time to get through all of the records. So if I hit this, may not have saved yet and updated all of my tasks. So I do need to allow time for that process to run and go through and update all of my items. All right. Next question. Is there a way for the plan to change color when something is behind schedule from the original baseline? So with the color of the tasks, you can choose to change the color based on status value in your custom business settings. But the only items that we have other than that will change color will be your warning date icons. So I recommend using the icons. Otherwise, you can create a icon, that will display based on the baseline criteria and display that within your custom field section. All right. Next question. Once you finish the plan, we need to reset the baseline dates, and that is the process that we've shown from setting the baseline field to true. If you navigated to your project detail and you notice that the set baseline date field has not been set back to false, then that means the process has failed. So you might need to review, maybe some validations might be triggering, and you'll want to make sure that it is always set false after the process runs. All right. Can you filter the Gantt view to critical path? So within your project-specific Gantt, you will not be able to filter to a certain area of the project. Now, you would need to determine how the system will recognize those dependencies as a critical dependency before it will you'll be able to filter by it. So whether that's like a custom field that is created to determine, hey, this dependency is critical or not, and then you will use your filters to modify them from there based on that custom field. And you can also choose to save your filters as well. All right. There's no way to see the baseline next to the actuals on the plan side by side. Yes, so if you wanted to display your baseline dates within the Gantt chart, you would just add in the custom fields here. So instead of my custom 2, I would have custom 1 and custom 2 being my baseline start date and my baseline end date. And then that will show on my columns within my Gantt chart. All right. Next question. You showed earlier how to adjust the autosave in the Gantt chart from the control pad. Is there any way to turn this off for some and leave it for others? If not, why is it an option by user? Will this be available in the future? So you can only choose to override the you can only choose to override the settings for all users or allow users to be able to manage their own settings. That would be a feature request to determine which users would be able to be an exception to the override here. I believe some form of automation would need to be created to exclude a certain user from this override here, which is a custom setting. But I'll definitely make sure to get that feature request in. Thank you. Just make a note of that. All right, next question. Can the baseline dates be included in the column? Yes, they can. And I can't recall if you said this. Will this call be recorded? Yes. So this session of the Cosmo Campfire, as well as other sessions, will be recorded and posted to our Cosmo Campfire page website. And you can also see other recorded sessions. The import and export feature of the Gantt chart, there is a specific video for this. That was our previous Cosmo Campfire session. So if you would like to dive deeper into importing and exporting your projects with the Gantt chart, please feel free to see this video. Our next video will be on our newest feature as well, which is the resource. Sorry, I have this written out here. Resource requests. Please forgive me. So if you would like to join in for our Cosmo Campfire resource requesting, you can choose to register for this session. And you'll also receive the recording via email as well. Do we have any questions, or are there any other areas of the Gantt chart that you guys would like to explore? I can go back to a particular area of the demonstration. So far, no additional questions are coming in just yet. I'll allow a couple more minutes here. You can choose to ask questions that are not related to the Gantt chart if you would like. We can open up for office hours session. Can you re-show how to show behind scheduled tasks? Of course. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Of course. So let's get on here. Let's go ahead and view in our standalone Gantt chart. All right, so automatically this feature will be enabled as a part of our latest release if a task is behind the date of today. It will be displayed as a red warning icon. If the date is, for example, let's set this one to this is my milestone. I'm like, why is it not letting me edit? Okay. If I change this to today, then I still have time to progress the task. Where did that just jump to? There we go. Now, if I reschedule this for the next upcoming days, oh, I'm zoomed in. And hit save. That's build content. Then it will be fine. And if it is coming up, today is the 21st, let's set it to the 22nd. And hit save. Then the warning icon will appear that our task is new. All right, next question. Now you can choose to also filter on the standalone. So if you wanted to create a filter that you are viewing actions where the end date is less than or greater than or equal to, you can also choose a relative date, so like last week, this quarter, and so forth. You can also filter here as well. Now, this will show you the entire project because you're pulling in the project plan, but you can choose to filter to projects that are overdue and so forth. All right. Any more questions? Again, it can be related to other areas of mission control. All right, I don't see any more questions coming in. Now, if you do need further support and have further questions after today, please feel free to reach out to us at support@aprika.com, or you can also create a support ticket from our website. We have many different resources that will be up to date already on our 1.75 new release. So if you have or you would like to explore the resources from our new release, you can do so from the release notes page of our website or from our knowledge base and user guide. All of those items have already been updated for our newest features. Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining in. It is great to have you for this Cosmo Campfire, and we will see you next month for a Campfire on resource requests. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.